Kia ora, Mr Speaker. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou kia ora. I want to acknowledge the new Transport spokesperson for the Labour Party and also the excellent work that Darian Fenton's done on truck safety in this Parliament. Members might not know this about me, but growing up in Gisborne, I was a boy racer. I'm not your typical greenie who's opposed to every single road and is hugging trees. I'm not sure if I'm the only member in this House who can change a car engine, but I can. So I'm a green who loves roads, and what this speech is about is why it's important we focus on our roads, but also we do it in a balanced approach. So, it's great. The House is just so enraptured I couldn't hear a word a single person said, so I'm just going to keep on going with my speech. It's good to be in front of this House discussing the Road Users Charge Bill. I want to talk a bit about this bill, but more importantly the agenda, because it's not just the small, mostly common sense changes, which is happening. The big picture is the stuff the Minister is deciding behind closed doors, the stuff that NZTA is implementing, and that's what I want to talk about. We've heard a few mentions already tonight about the Road Transport Forum. We've heard in hushed tones about Ken Shirley. We know these are powerful interests, and I'm proud to be standing here as the party that doesn't accept a cent from the Road Transport Forum. I never have, never will. We know how powerful this group is. They mobilised 4,400 cars to shut down some of our biggest cities to get what they wanted. And whilst I'm a supporter of non-violent direct action, we know how powerful and influential group this is. I want to provide a bit of a context, because while I was a boy racer, loved burning around in my Mark 1 red Ford Escort with the mag wheels, some of the context of what I'm bringing to this House is the idea that this House is wasting billions on these uneconomic motorways which are locking us into a car and truck dependent future. I mean, where's the balance? For every dollar we're spending in this House on walking, cycling, buses, trains, we're pouring $6 into new unaffordable motorways. For the 85% of Kiwis who cycle, we're only spending 10%. What we're lacking is that joined up thinking. You know, we're talking about roads of national significance. Why aren't we talking about corridors of national significance? What we believe is smart transport investments, and that's just not what we're seeing from this government. So this bill, we're going to support it to the Select Committee because there's some important questions we want to ask. I mean, let's be honest, this bill is pretty non-controversial. It is important, however, because what we do with our freight industry in New Zealand is going to have a huge bearing on our kids' future. You know, the truck amount of freight being carried in New Zealand is estimated to grow 75% to the mid-2030s, and the road user charges, the main way we get revenue, we spend that revenue. You know, even older than I am, this bill, the Road User Charge Bill, came out in 1978 when Muldoon was still trapping around this chamber. And we're one of the few countries in the world that still has road user charges. I mean, many other countries have just moved on. And as the Road Transport Forum point out, how we're spending $120 million in administration, which they just say is wasted. This bill approaches a user pays approach to our road trucks, which we support when it comes to commercial vehicles. There's a lot of them. You know, there's 580,000 heavy trucks under this road user charge or diesel vehicles. This bill won't be increasing or decreasing the amount these people are paying, but it will be making evasion more difficult. That's a good thing concerning it cost us around $30 million last year. We've heard an interesting question around the charging of the maximum weight, and I'm still open to the arguments around it, because on one side we heard from Darian Fenton how it's going to penalise some truckies, but on the other side it could act as an incentive to fully load your truck. That's going to be more efficient trucks on our road, hopefully less trucks, more safe. So I'm still open to that. It's going to introduce a framework for electronic payment, which could facilitate more accurate charging, which is good and could reduce compliance costs. Where the bill does drop the ball, I think, is going in favour of rewarding fuel efficiency. The Minister says they don't want this included in the road users charge, but what we've seen this government do is exempt road user charges from electric vehicles. And we need to make sure, and one thing I'll be keeping an eagle eye out in Select Committee, is the impact this is going to have. What I'm going to be looking for is the impact this is going to have on efficient, compact cars. Because, you know, as the Mini Corporation was saying, the current system, they call it the small car advantage minimalisation, or the SCAM approach to small compact cars. We need to have more small, compact, efficient diesel cars, and it'll be interesting to ask around biofuels. I've got a mate who drives around town in a chip-fat biodiesel car, so we need to ask questions how we're going to be impacting that, because what we don't want to be doing is penalising those who are doing a good job being more efficient on our roads. I guess the key thing I want to approach in this speech is what are we going to do with those road user charges income? You know, where are we going to spend these tens and hundreds of millions of dollars? That's what I want to look at, because there's three big things which makes the truck industry in New Zealand very, very happy. The first is the potential closure of 4 regional rail lines. The second is the heavy truck vehicle mass, what I call the juggernaut truck rule change earlier last year. And then lastly, the hugest investment in our country's transport history, which is the roads of national significance. So first to look at the regional rail closures. My hometown, Gisborne, is facing the closure of the Napier to Gisborne rail line, and 3 other regional rail routes are facing the same. This is going to be a boon to trucks. In Gisborne and up on the east coast, we're facing a wall of wood, pine plantations which is maturing. It needs to get to port to export somehow, and if we close that route in the next couple of years, the only option is going to be on trucks, on the roads, making our roads less safe, more oil dependent, and worse for the climate. These are community assets. Long-standing people have actually died building these trucks in our history, and they're also considerable community economic assets for regions like my home region, Gisborne, going forward to the future. This government last year introduced the heavy truck rule up to 53-tonne, 22-metre trucks. These trucks are and are going to have an increasingly huge impact on our road, on the road toll, and also the viability of rail and coastal shipping. Already heavy trucks are involved in 16% of our crashes, even though they only account for 4% of our fleet. And it's Kiwi motorists and cyclists who are going to be facing these heavy juggernaut trucks and the risks they entail. Ratepayers are the big losers from this rule. They're going to be subsidising the heavy truck industry in terms of bridge maintenance, road maintenance. At the same time, this government has raided the road maintenance budget to fund its grandiose roads of national significance. Looking at these 7 projects, this $11 billion gamble from the Minister, it's uneconomic. You know, many of these have negative benefit cost ratios, and as we saw from independent earlier estimates, some of them had benefit cost ratios as low as 0.4. I'd get laughed out of a meeting, and if I went to a council and proposed something with a BCR of 0.4, I don't believe the Minister is getting away with it. For the amount of money, we're not getting a good return on our investment. You know, I've tabled reports in this House from the OECD showing that there's more jobs, there's more macroeconomic benefits, there's twice as many jobs per dollar spent when we invest in public transport or road maintenance or local roads, not pouring all of our money in motorways. I think the key point is that even Don Brash is opposed to some of these roads. As part of the 2025 task force, he said there's no evidence projects like Transmission Gully would provide a net benefit for the economy. The fact is the way we're going about transport planning in New Zealand, which isn't joined up, which doesn't look at the climate, which doesn't value our dependence on oil, which just promotes a huge growth in the amount of freight carried on our roads. The irony is the smarter things the government could do is have a joined-up approach and actually investing in things like our regional rail lines to break those decades of negative feedback, death cycles as they're called. If we invested in things like a CBD rail loop to get cars off Auckland streets, this is actually going to benefit motorists and trucking companies more than these uneconomic, unwanted, terrible for the climate, roads of national significance, and all the really dumb decisions this government's making when it comes to transport. Kia ora.
Well done, Russell.